What'd I tell y'all? I told y'all that the establishment is going to learn to stop playing around with Tulsi Gabbard. I said that. I said she's not like Bernie. Bernie is a little bit more reserved. Now, there's reasons why he's more reserved, but we'll go into that in a little bit. But she's not like Bernie. You know, she's not as, AOC will clap back on Twitter and in person. She's a little bit more reserved. A little bit. She'll tell the facts, but she's a little bit more reserved. Tulsi is not like either of them. AOC may be the clapback queen on Twitter, but Tulsi has been known for being the clapback queen in real life. Just take a look at this clip right here.
There have been reports that that Russian apparatus that interfered in 2016 is potentially trying to help your campaign. Why do you think that is?
Cite those reports and their credibility.
Well, the Russian propaganda machine, we did an analysis actually.
I just want to point out.
News.
I want to point out that that NBC article has been debunked and disproven.
By whom?
Because I would ask you to look at the credibility of the sources and the so-called experts.
Well, I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that my colleagues did not do their due diligence.
Other journalists
I do know what our standards are here.
Other journalists have debunked and disproven the so-called experts that have been cited in that article. And I think it's actually very dangerous for articles like that and outlets like NBC to put out this information that seeks to bully people into saying, you can't come out and take the positions that I've taken of calling for an end to the Cold War, calling for an end to this nuclear crisis that we are facing. Otherwise, you're going to be smeared as someone who is a subject of Russian propaganda.
So you're essentially saying that you do not think that Russians are helping you at all, and that, in fact, any reporting to that effect is bullying Americans into not supporting
you. What I'm saying is the article that was put out has proven to be discredited. The experts have been proven to be discredited. The American people deserve the truth, and they deserve to know exactly what's happening, and to make sure that whether it's me or other candidates who are running for president are not immediately attempted to be discredited simply because of the message that we're delivering.
So since we're on the topic of Russia, and since it's 2019, I have to ask you, have you met with any Russians over the past several years? And are you currently trying to build a building in Moscow?
No and no.
Oh, no and no. Okay, very good. We can end there.
Tulsi Tower.
Wow. Tulsi Tower, right?
So, as you can see, Tulsi isn't having any of that nonsense. Now, if you don't know what NBC article she's referring to, the other day, the morning before she actually made her official announcement at her rally in Hawaii, which went absolutely fantastic, by the way. The performances were beautiful. The Hawaiian culture and just the Polynesian culture in general is beautiful. You can tell that the people have a genuine love for Tulsi Gabbard, and that announcement was actually true to herself. It wasn't some facade. This is the person who takes her pictures in lays, because that's just, she's that entrenched in the culture. She doesn't listen to Beyonce Lemonade just because somebody told her that was a cool thing to say on the Breakfast Club. She surfs because this is what she's done her entire life. Like, that's her culture. So it's beautiful to see. Anyway, on that morning, NBC released an article saying that the apparatus that attacked Hillary on behalf of Trump and ultimately uplifted Trump to the election, which we all know is complete BS, that same apparatus is now trying to help Tulsi Gabbard. Now, they cited a source that Glenn Greenwald promptly responded to in another article by saying this source was literally discredited not by me, not by Niko House, not by Jimmy Dore, Tim Black, or Lee Camp. This article, or that expert that you're citing, was discredited by the New York Times. Mind you, the New York Times is establishment, but they were so bad at their job that they got caught trying to essentially create fake Russian troll accounts in order to prop up Doug Jones in the race in Alabama against the pedophile, which is really weird that you needed to prop up Doug Jones against the pedophile and an overtly racist douchebag. Like, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a pedophile and a racist douchebag. You can't really get worse than that. You shouldn't have to create fake profiles. Now, Tulsi, whenever they address it, you saw what she did. Listen, people, and I want to be honest. Like, this is our election we're talking about here. This is a primary election where the soul of the Democratic Party is at stake. The soul of our country is truly at stake because at this point, I truly believe it's going to be between Bernie and Tulsi. And if either one of them win, they will probably beat Donald Trump because that's just how it's going to pan out for them. The Bernie crew will undoubtedly get behind Tulsi and vice versa when the time comes. Now, the important part is what happens after. Who is going to stand up to the establishment and who is going to back down to the establishment or capitulate to the establishment or give a bunch of leeway to the establishment? I think that at this point, Tulsi is showing consistently that she is not going to play the games that Bernie plays with the establishment, where I want to focus on the issues. And yeah, that's fine, but they're smearing you. And there, unfortunately, are some people who believe it. But even if they don't believe it, when you say, okay, I'm going to ignore the fact that the entire mainstream media machine is ignoring me or is trying to smear me because of my policies, while they simultaneously co-opt my policies, it's dangerous for the American people to believe that, that you're some Russian operative. And then even if they don't believe it, they're going to be like, well, why isn't he defending himself? There's a professional way to go about defending yourself. Tulsi just did it. She showed us possible. And they're going to keep bringing her on just like they kept bringing AOC on to try and smear her. The same exact way. That's stupid. How can we afford that? Blase, blase, blah. Russia, Russia, Russia. They will continue to behave like this. They will because they can't silence her. Because she has too big of a platform already. Remember, when Bernie first came onto the scene, he didn't have the platform that Tulsi has already. So they can't really silence her in that regard. So now they have to move on. They have to skip a couple of steps and go straight to the smearing. Basically, every article that's come out about Tulsi Gabbard from the mainstream has been a negative hit piece. Whereas every article, except for maybe 0.05 of them that have come out against Kamala Harris, have been love, 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 love. This is why we should forgive her for everything. But we're not going to tell you what she did, but we're going to say we should forgive her for it. Tulsi's had enough. And you know what? I think the American people are leaning more towards we've had enough than let's all get along, kumbaya, and shake hands with the enemy for political expediency. I think that Tulsi is more in line with the AOC, you won't play ball? Fine, we'll primary your ass and get you out of office. Then, well, let's not step on any toes. Let's not, once again, I understand where Bernie is coming from. Bernie has been the victim of some pretty outlandish attacks. Basically nothing he says, nothing he does can be seen as being positive. Literally, dealing on Twitter yesterday with a bunch of people who are saying, can you believe that Bernie Sanders is, trying to claim to be a civil rights hero when actually Bernie Sanders never mentioned his civil rights record. We ended up finding it later, or like maybe a quarter of a way through the campaign. We found out about his civil rights record because we, do this little thing in the progressive world called researching. I know sometimes it's hard for people to believe that people still do conduct research, but we do research. So he's called a poser. There's the new lines that the bots have been giving on Twitter, in case you've been paying attention to Twitter, is Bernie has been consistently absent. And they call it white flight to Vermont. He was, white flight. Bernie's from Jewish Brooklyn. I don't know if you know anything about Brooklyn Jewish people, except for the new Israelis that have moved in. When Bernie was living in the Jewish Brooklyn hub, it was all white. You can't white flight from all white. And just because you conducted white flight, in other words, just because you moved from a white neighborhood to another white neighborhood around people you felt more comfortable with, I'm not really upset about that, because maybe he felt culturally he had more in common with the socialists of Vermont at the time, because that's what Vermont was kind of known for. But if Bernie Sanders moved into the hood, he would be a culture vulture. But that's neither here nor there, right? So I can understand why Bernie Sanders feels like he has to kind of tiptoe a little bit. He can't be as forceful as a white guy, because white men, unfortunately, have been painted like they've been weaponizing they've been weaponizing legitimate victimhood, claiming false victimhood, and then targeting it at enemies of the establishment. Just this morning, had to deal with something similar. Somebody told me that because I called Kamala Harris an idiot for hiring Hillary Clinton's campaign people after they lost the potentially easiest race in history, 99% chance of winning, remember that. They said, oh, you must secretly hate women, and because objectively Kamala Harris is intelligent, which no, I don't believe objectively that she is intelligent. I believe intelligence is more than just networking with who the hell you want to and getting whatever position you bend over for. Maybe literally, somewhat metaphorically, combination of both maybe. I'm just saying, I'll leave that in the comment section. That's not me. I'm not touching it. But I told her, oh, so I secretly hate women. Well, I'll just let you know that I can play that game too, since, everybody wants to play the oppression Olympics game, because it's my knowledge that white women like to pretend that black men are the predators and that they are always the victims of black men, because they know society has painted them as damsels in distress, and they will always get the benefit of the doubt over the black men. See, I can play the game as well. Oppression for everybody. No, you're not going to weaponize legitimate victimhood for your own purposes. And so when we look at that victimhood, the legitimate problems that women and women of color have to deal with regularly, notice that Tulsi Gabbard is left out of those conversations. When they say, oh, why are people always attacking women of color? They get disproportionately critiqued. They say that Kamala Harris gets disproportionately critiqued as a Southeast Asian woman. But as a Polynesian woman, Tulsi isn't being overly critiqued as a woman of color. Is she not? Now, I would say for both of them, I would say Tulsi isn't getting critiqued because she's a woman of color. She's getting critiqued because she's speaking on issues that primarily affect everybody, especially women of color, or people of color. Kamala Harris may be getting critiqued as a woman of color, but that's because you've presented Kamala to us as a woman of color, and because of that, simultaneously trying to associate her color with her want to actually be have a positive impact on communities of color. When we know for a fact she's been everything but positive towards people in communities of color. Like, that's just a fact. So clearly Tulsi has just gotten fed up. Because like I said, when they were truly like, oh, well, my colleagues do when she said the standard, well, I know our standards here at MSNBC. Bruh, Rachel Maddow is saying that Russia is going to destroy the country by controlling our weather patterns. Bruh, what is the standard at MSNBC? We're all waiting to find out, because y'all are really creeping on that Alex Jones line right now. So The fact that they will go on, try to bring her on, try to set her up, they were hoping she would react like Bernie, right? Bernie ignores it oftentimes. They were hoping she may react like AOC. AOC kind of stumbles. She's gotten much better. She's kind of stumbled in the past. It was new to her. But she stumbles. She doesn't want to come off as aggressive or emotional because she knows she'll be attacked for it. So, she stumbles a little bit. They want her to react like that. But instead, she confidently looks at them and smiles and said, according to what source? That source has already been discredited. In the calm, soothing, just enchanting way she speaks and carries herself, she wasn't having it. And personally, from the people I've talked to on a regular basis, that is what people want to see. They want to see someone finally stand up to the establishment and say, I've had enough. That's one thing that people loved about Bernie Sanders when he first emerged. But I just want to say that Tulsi seems to be taking it a step farther. Her speech called out Medicare for all, absolutely. Her speech calls for the end of the prison industrial complex, absolutely. Calling it what it is, by the way, which is important. But then she goes on further, calls out the intelligence communities, calls out both parties, calls out corporations, calls out Wall Street, calls out regime change, calls out Trump, calls out Saudi Arabia, calls out big money in politics. These are words that every progressive won't touch, but Tulsi has shown that she's more than willing to. I think that's going to bode well for her by the time these primaries are over. Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. You can donate to our Patreon and keep helping the network grow by clicking on the link in the description below. And also, make sure you join us at JustNForm.com. And finally, make sure you subscribe to us on Roku and be part of the very first independent news network on Roku TV. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.